tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to do the ruffle stitches. Now I've made up a few different samples here just so that I can show you what can be achieved using the exact same technique but would give very different results. So the first one I'm going to show you is this one here. Just move those. And this is one that I've done with obviously 5 different colours, and I've been doing 2 rows of each different colour, and then I've added on the ruffle stitches afterwards. But I think that's a really nice visual effect. It would make an absolutely stunning baby blanket, and it would also make really nice scarves. Obviously I've done this as a scarf width, and I will probably finish this off at some point. But this is the effect that you can get by using lots of different colours and adding white ruffles, so that's really nice. The second one is one that I've done in the opposite. I've just used one colour for my background, so I've done all of my stitches in white, which in some ways is easier because you don't have to change colour every 2 rows, and you don't have as many ends to be weaving in and things. You just make up your blanket in your background colour, and then you can add your multicoloured ruffles. And again, it's a really lovely, bright and cheerful effect when using rainbow colours like these. But that's again using the exact same technique but just swapped around. And then finally, this is one that I've done in a chunky yarn. So I've done this one using a 6mm hook. All of the others were done with DK yarn and a 4mm. This is one that I've done, I made it up as a sample for a baby blanket to show somebody to see what they thought of it, and they absolutely loved it. They thought it was really beautiful. So this is just done in various shades of pink, and these yarns were paint box chunky yarns, which are really soft and lovely yarns to use. So this one I've just used 3 alternating colours, and then I've added in the ruffles in cream, and again it would make such a beautiful, beautiful baby blanket with so much texture as well, which obviously babies love, but it looks really nice. So for the tutorial itself, I'll just move these out the way. I'm going to do a rainbow one, but I'm going to do it with a variegated yarn, so it's all different shades as you can see, and then I'm going to do my ruffles in cream. So whether you're using lots of different colours or whether you're just going to use the one like I am now, the technique is exactly the same. So let me just bring back one of these. So for this one, as I say, I did 2 rows of each colour, and the only thing that you need to do for this is to do your row, and then on your one where you change colour, that row that you work, that very first row that you work when you change from one colour to the next, you will work in the back loops only. And you have to do an even number of rows because otherwise your ruffles would end up being on different sides. So you could, these are, like I say, done with 2 rows, but you could do 4 or 6 depending on how often you wanted to have your ruffle at the end. But like I say, every time you change colour, you need to have made sure you've done an even number of rows, and on the very first row when you change colour, we will work in the back loop only, and then you will do a row working through the top of the stitch completely, and then again you will change colour, and your very first row that you work of your new colour will be in the back loop only. So that is how you get the effect. But like I say, if you're not sure on how to change colour, then you will just need to nip and check out my absolute beginner series, and there is a tutorial in there for how to change colour, and that is the exact tutorial that you would need to learn obviously how to change colour when doing your rows of treble crochet. Remember, that's UK treble, US double. So as I'm only going to do one ball of yarn as my entire background colour, I'm not going to be changing colours, but I will say at every point when I get to it that this is where you would need to change colour. So for this particular stitch you can use a foundation chain of any number, it doesn't matter at all. just as wide as you want it to be for whatever you're making for your blanket or your scarf or whatever. So you would just need to create your foundation chain. Remember to keep it relatively loose so that it doesn't start to fan as you work up. So obviously I'm only going to do a sample piece, but you would just need to make your chain as big as you need it to be. So I've just done a quick multiple of 20 just to start my project. And so now we're going to work back along our foundation chain doing treble crochet. So that's UK treble, US double. So you want to count back to your 4th chain. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and this is my 4th, and I'm going to do a treble. So I'm going to yarn over, insert into that stitch, yarn over and pull up, and I've got my 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and that is my first treble. And then these stitches here count as another treble. So you're going to do that into every stitch along. So yarn over, insert into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and the next. So you're just going to carry on doing 1 treble crochet into every single stitch. So I've just done my very last treble crochet into that very last stitch, and we're ready to move on to the next row. So as I say, I am just going to be doing, you're going to be doing treble crochets for the entire thing. So I'm just going to turn my work straight away. I'm not going to chain at the end of my row because that tends to leave big gaps, which I don't like. So I've turned, and then into this very first stitch just here, I'm going to insert my hook, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull up. I've got 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both, and then you can see I've got like 2 standing stitches there. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the left hand one, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull up. Again, I've got 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, and that now is my treble for the top of this treble. But you can see it's much thicker than it would be if you were just chaining 3. So I've done that now, and then this is the top of that stitch, and I'm going to use a stitch marker, and I'm going to pop it through the top of that stitch because it's so important to have nice straight edges on this project. So that will just confirm to me when I come back down again going the other way that that is the very last stitch that I need to work into. So now all the way along you're just going to put 1 treble crochet into every single stitch. So we've done this treble here, and we're going to move on to the top of this treble. So yarn over, insert into that stitch, and make sure you get the whole of the stitch. So you should have a V on the top of your hook, and then complete your treble. And you're going to do that into every single stitch across. And I will meet you when you get towards the end of this row and just firm up that placement of the very last stitch to continue making sure that we get our lovely straight edges. So I will meet you there in just a tick. So I'm coming towards the end now, and I've done my treble into the top of this treble here, and you can see I've got 1 full treble left there to work into the top of, so I shall do that one now. And then I've got that funny little chain at the end here from when we started our foundation chain, and you do want to make sure that you work into that stitch. So you will see that there's a chain 3, so you've got 1, 2 and 3 stitches, and you want to work into that top of that very 3rd chain and do your treble. And so again, that is your 2 rows of treble crochet. So you will always start with 2 rows of just normal trebles worked into the top of the stitches as normal, and this is now where it will start to be a little bit different. So if you were changing colours now, you would have done it as per my tutorial, where you pull your new colour through those last 2 stitches, and then you would tie on, and then you would turn. And so now this is where we will want our very first ruffle. So you will always have 2 or 4, like I say, always an even number, so that your ruffles are always on the same side. So we are starting row 3 now, but this is where, like I say, in all of my other ones I changed colour. So you'll turn, and then from this row we're only going to work into the back loop, and that starts right from the very beginning. So you want to find the back loop of this very first stitch just here, so that you've got your V there, but this is the back loop. So you want to push your yarn out of the way and insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over and pull up, and you're going to do your treble the way that we're going to start all of our rows, just like we did before, to get a nice thick treble. And then you're going to do your trebles all the way across, but into the back loops only. So we're going to start our next stitch, so yarn over and insert into the back of the V only, yarn over and pull up and do your treble. And again, yarn over, and we're going to go into the next stitch, but we're going to go into the back loop only. So yarn over, insert into the back loop and do your treble. So you're going to continue that all the way along, one treble into every stitch, but only working in the back loop. And this creates a little row of stitches at the base here where the front loops were, and that is what we work our ruffles into later. So I'll meet you towards the end of this row. Oh, and remember to pop your, if you need stitch markers, which I don't necessarily, but I do use them just to make sure, just pop that into that very first stitch again. I just forgot to do it then. So I've popped it into the top of that stitch. I'm just coming towards the end of my row now. I just need to do my very last stitch. So I'm just going to take out my stitch marker and do my very last stitch just here. And so that is our very first row of back loop only. So that is your, if you've changed colours, that will be your very first row in your new colour. So again, we're going to move on. We're going to turn, and for this row you're going to work into the whole of the stitch. So you're not going to do back loops, you're going to do the V. So again, you'll start like you've started every other row, and then you will carry on every stitch along with a treble, but again working into the whole of the stitch this time, so making sure you've got the V. To pop my stitch marker in again. So if you want to do one treble into every single stitch along, and then again I will meet you when you get to the other end. So it's a very simple pattern. It is literally just rows and rows and rows and rows of treble crochet, but after 2 rows of one colour, if you were changing colour, then you would do your first row of your new colour in back loops only. And that's all you need to remember really. Whereas if you're using a variegated yarn like I am, you would just do 2 rows, your next row would be in back loops only. But that is all you need to remember. So it's a really simple pattern. And just obviously, if you're unsure, just make sure that your ridges with your front loops are all on one side. Again, I'm just coming towards the end of this row now, so I'm just going to pull out my stitch marker and work my last stitch. And again, if you were doing different colours, then this is obviously your second row in that colour. So this is the point where you would change colour again by pulling your new colour through these last 2 stitches. And then you'll turn again. And so obviously you can see you've got your first 2 rows, which would be in one colour if you were changing. So you'd have 1 row, and then you would have your next 2 rows, and so on. So this now is, if I'd attached a new colour, would be my first row of the new colour. But if you were using variegated yarn, then you know that you can feel the ridge down there from your row of back loop onlys, and you can see that you've done 2 rows of trebles. So you know now that it is time to work back loop only again. So I'll do this next row of back loop only with you, and then again into the loop at the front and doing your next part. And then we're on to the next stitch, and remember, back loop only. So it's so simple. So if you want to carry on working up that pattern now, if you were changing colours, do your rows of colours, and every time you change colour, making sure you've had an even number of rows, you work your first row of the new colour in back loop only, and the rest of them in the whole of the stitch. So if you want to work that up now, and then I will meet you when you've done that, and we will start working on the ruffle section. So obviously I'm only working a really small sample piece today for you to see. So I've got 2 ridges now there that I will work my ruffles into. This sudden colour variegated yarn works quite nicely, obviously, but I really think that a variegated yarn that has really subtle, smooth colour changes would be absolutely gorgeous. I've got a blue, I think it's called Hayfield Spirit actually, and it's the blue one, and it has loads of really soft blues. The colour change is really gentle, and I can't wait to work that up into a blanket because I really think it will look like a rough sea, because the colour changes are so soft, and then adding the ruffles it would almost look like the spray off a rough sea, and I can't wait to make that. So anyway, once you've completed your base for your blanket, to start adding the ruffles, it's so easy. So on your very first row here, where you've got your ridge, where your front loops are sticking out, you're going to insert your hook into that very first front loop just here, and you're going to pull that yarn through, and as always I like to tie mine on, and to this day I've never, touch wood, had a project come undone. And then you're going to pop your hook back through and pull a loop through, and this little bit is up to you actually. All of these ones I've done with a chain of 3 on the rainbow ones. They've all been done with chains of 3 for the ruffles. However, the top row of this blanket here, these bottom rows were done with chain 3s, but the top row was done with chain 4s. I wanted to see how much more exaggerated the ripple would be. So you can see on that top row, the ruffles are a little bigger, and that is because I chained 4. So you can chain 3 or 4 or even 5 if you wanted really big ruffles. But I'm going to stick with my chain 3. So 1, 2 and 3, and then you're going to go into the front stitch of the next stitch. So you've come up from this one here, and it helps to bend your work a little if you need to see the stitches. You're going to go into that front loop, the next one, and you're going to just slip stitch, so yarn over and pull through both loops, and then again chain 3 and through the front loop of the next stitch just here, and slip stitch, chain 3. You can probably see where this is going now. And slip stitch into that next front loop, chain 3 and slip stitch into the next. And so by working into the back loops only for the blanket or scarf, whatever it is you've made, it leaves these front loops open for us to work these beautiful ruffles. And so it's such a very simple pattern, and it's very repetitive, so you can do it without really having to think about it, and that is one of the reasons why I love it. But the end result looks really lovely. So you're just going to keep working all the way along into the front loops only of the stitches that we left, and I will meet you as you get towards the other end in just a tick. Okay, so I've just done the last stitch for this particular row, and I've slip stitched down, and then I'm just going to yarn over and pull through and snip off. Pull that out and pull it down to tighten up. So that is your very first ruffle layer. You can have them so that these really are very sticky out or if you want, they do actually lay pretty flat, and then if you turn them around they look like this, and it actually reminds me of like icing on a cake. When it's all in the layers like this, it just reminds me of a really pretty cake. I don't know why. But that is how you will add your ruffles. So you would just do that exact same process on every single row where you've got your front stitches here. And that is all you need to do to get this really fun and beautiful effect for your work. So that is it for the tutorial itself. Remember, as always, come and find me on Instagram and please tag me in things that you make from my tutorials. I really do love to see. I will link that down below as always. And remember to like and subscribe, and feel free to share the video wherever you want. But it's a really beautiful, simple stitch that just gives really lovely and different effects. So using the same technique, but just by changing the type of yarn you use or the way that you do your colours, can just give completely different end results, but all with using the very same technique. But I really hope that you've enjoyed this one, everyone, and I will see you for another tutorial very soon. Thanks as always for watching. Bye.